welcome to the journey. We have Michael Kelly.
Yes.
And welcome to the journey. And let me tell you a little bit about the journey. The journey is just ordinary individuals coming on to the show to just have conversations about the story of their life, of how they have navigated through their life, what obstacles that they've had, what lessons they've learned from those obstacles. Through those obstacles, how was their resiliency developed? How was there some transformational experience that happened? How did they fail forward? How did they take things that were setbacks and then find the gift within that obstacle, within that setback, and then proceed through life and maybe carry that message on to someone else? And so now we got to know each other over the last couple years, and you helped out a year ago, performed for us with our Shatter Our Silence Out of the Ashes, and provided some background music for individuals as they met the artist and were coming into the theater, and that was last September. And we have another event coming up this year, Out of the Ashes, on September 5th at Giovanni's, and so that'll be another opportunity for you to be part of that. And but before we jump into certain elements of your story and your experience of life, what do you do for fun when you have an opportunity to have fun, relax? What do you do for fun?
When I do find that precious time off, I'm a Frisbee golf guy.
Okay.
I live in Freeport, and they got an awesome 18-hole
I didn't know that.
There. Oh, yeah, at Crate Park. Freeport Park District rocks, by the way.
Yeah.
And I use my bicycle as a golf cart, so to speak, and so there's that. Finding that time to spend with my grandkids. I have two. They just turned 2 and 4 yesterday.
Oh, really?
And so there's a certain kind of peace, but yet craziness that goes with that.
Sure. But now, did they have the same birthday?
4 days apart.
4 days apart. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 2 and 4.
Okay.
But
and what's their names? What's their name?
My 4-year-old is Atticus.
Okay.
And the 2-year-old girlie is Epliana.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have how many children of your own?
Two daughters.
2 daughters. Okay. And what's their names?
Tiffany is my oldest, and Noha, my youngest.
Okay. All right.
She's the mommy of the grandbabies.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Now, growing up, did you grow up in Freeport?
No. I grew up in Clinton, Iowa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you were in Clinton for how long? I mean, you graduated from high school in Clinton?
Ended up, my dad worked at General Electric.
Okay.
And so that was in Morrison, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
12 miles, whatever direction that is, in Illinois there. But so we ended up moving there 70, 71.
Okay.
So I pretty much, like the end of the junior high and all of high school was in Morrison.
Okay. All right. And then you have siblings?
No.
So you're only child?
Only child.
Only child. Okay. And Dad worked at General Electric, and what did Mom do?
Mom is a retired school teacher.
Okay.
Like 2nd grade level.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Quite precious.
Sure.
Yeah.
And when your dad was at GE, what did he do at GE?
Electrical engineer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now, was he obviously he was able to come home every night, but worked a lot of hours, I'm assuming, as an electrical engineer.
Well, from what I remember, I mean, he's my stepdad. I never ever call him that, but I didn't have a father all the way. He met my mother when I was like 7.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so there's that. There's a little fatherless time there.
Okay. So the person you refer to as Dad is technically your stepfather.
Yes.
And then your biological father. Have you ever met him?
I finally met him face to face in my 40s.
Oh, okay.
Many years later.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, he dropped my mom and I off, and I guess he said he'd be right back, but I don't know. He must have got lost somewhere.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, got distracted.
Kind of unclear of the whole story,
Sure,
but my mom doesn't really talk about it much. So
Sure. Okay.
I understand.
Yeah. So you were obviously with your mom from obviously birth, and then your dad came into the picture. Stepfather came into the picture when you were around 7, and so obviously that's going to make a big difference in how life goes and, and all that. And so, if there was one thing that you can think of, what was it like being an only child? I have a younger sibling. I know what it's like to be the oldest child. I don't know what it's like to be an only child. So what was it like? If you think back, what was that like?
It was very well, being the 60s and in the 70s, but just that I didn't know what was out there.
Okay.
And trying to figure it out, the curiosity, the technology, well, there wasn't much, the music, and how do you learn about stuff? It's on the playground, it's at school, or just wherever little social interaction I had. But I just kind of clung to my mom, and I think there was some daycare and some babysitters and stuff like that. But it's really kind of a blur.
Sure. Well, and I, even as an only child growing up, as your parents are getting older, and you shared with me about your parents now live in Florida, and so some of those responsibilities, all those responsibilities of parents getting older are now just on one. There's not 5 other siblings to share that with, and maybe there's some goods and bads of that, but nonetheless, that is an element of when you get older. There's no one to share that experience with, the taking care of parents. And I know is my dad's birthday. His 75th birthday is tomorrow, and knowing that as they're getting older, I have not only my wife, but I have my brother that will hopefully help out and contribute, of taking care of as they continue to get out, continue to get older as we get older. So
yeah, that's there's a lot of talk. They're here right now. They came up. They flew. Last year they drove. It's getting to that point where driving is not a good choice. It's just way too far. And even the flight. Now you're looking for the wheelchair, and my dad, neuropathy. He's got several things that all lead into one big thing. It's just tired, and it's hard to watch. It's he's such a piddler, I got, but he's that guy that would not call the carpenter, but he would put in the new kitchen cabinets, and he would roof the house, and he just knew how to do everything. And I learned quite a bit from him on that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily do that. I just kind of live in a house, and I just kind of drive my car, but he takes care of all that kind of stuff. But I'm not the best car owner or house owner, but so I'm not necessarily following in his footsteps, but I did learn a lot.
Sure.
But back to my mother's doing really well, but they are a long ways away, and there's a lot of stuff going on with my dad, just a lot of questions. They go to the doctor, and I don't know why this is going on, or whatever this is or that, and just all kinds of mysteries, And then my oldest daughter, we're all together, in this, and so when that time comes, we'll just see how that goes.
Do your daughters say they live nearby?
My oldest daughter's right in the heart of Chicago, like literally across the street from Lincoln Park Zoo.
Okay.
And my youngest daughter with the grandbabies are just right down the road.
Okay.
Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah. And so seeing them is pretty simple.
Sure.
Making the trek to Chicago is always an adventure. I like to take the train and take the bus and
sure.
And we just go hang out a little bit, But
sure.
So it's it's all good.
Good. So the majority of your schooling was in Morrison, Illinois,
Yeah.
and junior high and high school. Obviously, grade school was back in Iowa, and so what was it like? What was your high school, junior high school? Were you in sports? Were you involved with? I know you play music now, but what did you do? What was junior high and high school like?
Well, it's kind of strange. When you meet that group of people from kindergarten, usually everybody's together all the way through high school or something like that, But it seems like I would just always get, you just get to know some people. You get your little friends in grade school, and then all of a sudden here I am in junior high in a whole other area and a bunch of new friends. So all that fear and. So it was a little tricky at first, but you meet that one person, and then you meet another person, and then you start hanging out. But it was I was a pretty social guy. I was willing to meet whoever, anybody that would. I found out that. My self-esteem. I just wanted to be liked, like anybody else, I think. But sometimes I have a tendency to pick the wrong people, just whoever. Sure. And I would give you the time of day, Yeah. It wasn't always of my parents' approval kind of a thing, Sure. But, But I think I was fairly normal in that, just other than the fact of being an only child. And I thought when they said that, when I found out that I was an only, the description, the definition or whatever, I thought they said lonely child, and so so all of a sudden I'm just this lonely little boy,
Yeah.
Feel sorry for me.
Sure.
I'm all alone. Sure. But and it was the 70s, and just what you do. You ride your bikes and you go fishing, and then other things kind of came up, But we'll probably get into that.
Yeah. So, but it is interesting, and I think school's going to be starting here in a few weeks, and when this conversation comes out, and there'll be a percentage of students who are just like in your experience, either transferred in, is going to a different school because they moved, whatever it may be, and it is that element of how do you, where do I fit? Where do I plug in? Who am I? And you going to Morrison at the time of your junior high year, and even more so, you're trying to figure out who you are in the whole scheme of the world. And your world is a small little pocket of your community. But it's the time when if our parents have done a good job, and it sounds like your parents did, it is at that time period where we naturally, because they did a good job and we are connected with them, it's time to break away and explore socially outside of the home, and they talk about this developing our identity, developing where we're at, and then we have this inner conflict of how do I fit in? This identity versus role confusion is a psychologist named Eric Erickson who came up with this during that time period, and it lasts all the way through our teen years typically. And I think there's a vulnerability that happens at that time period, and I think we can get involved because of just those reasons. I want to be liked, and maybe I don't fit in with this group or that group, or I perceive I wouldn't fit in with that group because they're smarter, they're good at sports, or they're good at art, or they're good at whatever it may be, and I've already put myself in a position where I don't fit in, or I pick up on social cues where they may not have welcomed me in. Maybe not even formally not welcomed you in, but and so then we end up getting maybe into a subgroup, and again, it goes back to what you just said. I just wanted to fit in somewhere. I just wanted to be liked, and we don't even consciously know this, other than we just want to try to plug in somewhere. But so you kind of alluded to this, that there was also possibly, or there was, you got involved with some individuals and maybe started experimenting, started exploring avenues that mom and dad probably wouldn't want to know, which at the time period in the late 60s and mid to late 60s and in the 70s, this was there was this element of giving permission to be a little bit more counterculture. You could either be like mom and dad, exactly how mom and dad were, or you could find an alternative path. But like for me, I know it wasn't as clean as that, right? I was still living with them.
Right.
I still was under those.
Oh man. Yeah. No, it seemed like, this is a weird analogy, but like North Korea, maybe I shouldn't get I'm not going to get too political, but those people don't know what's going on. They don't know what's out there. I think that's so disguised, some of the politics and keeping your people down like that. But I mean, it seemed like I didn't know what was going on out there. Mm-hmm. What was in my house, we had like 2 albums, a Blood, Sweat, and Tear record and a Herb Alpert one. The one with that chick with the whipped cream all over her.
Oh yeah, I remember that album, yeah.
Ooh, baby, but there's something about that. But, just the music. And, my dad was like a talk show guy on the radio. We'd take the family truckster with the wood grain paneling. Mm-hmm. I might get 15 minutes of music, of WLS and whatever was going on then, but not much. And so I didn't know what was out there.
Yeah.
But then you go to school and your friends are talking about Foghat or who are they, and bringing an album to school, and I'm like, wow, what is that, and you're just learning, and so it was not that they were hiding things from me, but I just noticed that my friends were doing other things that it didn't seem like I was able to do.
Okay, so that may have been, and again, this isn't criticism of only children. It's not. This isn't that at all. But it is one of the setbacks, right? Of being an only child. You're only going to be exposed in the house to what your parents expose you to,
right?
And it may be what they do.
Yeah.
Maybe because that's how they were parented, right? And most likely that's how it happened. So you've talked about music a couple times. So what was there's a gravitation toward. There's something about music that pulled you at an early age, even if you only got 15 minutes of WLS. So what was that pull? What was that?
Well, you just hear it. It was like, man, what is that? Kind of reminds me of Steve Martin in The Jerk. I don't know, when he finally hears that little radio show in the middle of the night and he hears that jazz. He's like, if there's more, there must be more of this. It was just that, and my dad had all sisters, and just a quick side note, my dad's his last sister passed away just this last week. And
oh right, okay. I'm sorry.
So that's we had birthdays of babies yesterday and visitations and funerals tomorrow. So it's kind of one of those bittersweet moments. But my one aunt, 20-year difference of my dad. We would go over there on Sundays after church, and my Aunt Susie, and man, hey, come on up to my room, and and turn me on to the Monkees and the Stones and the Beatles. She was a Beatle freak, and just whatever was going on at that time, I got to hear all this stuff, and it was like more and more and more, and
so this was your aunt that maybe was the first real introduction to music, different types of music.
So I'm like this little twerpy kid, butch haircut, just kind of a dork, going through that phase, and I'm 8 or 9, and going over to her house, and she's spinning, the records for me and showing me this stuff, and
nice.
So she was very instrumental in getting me into that, along with friends who, had all these cassettes. Sure. I remember Hotel California when it came out, and this friend of mine had this cassette, and it's like, wow. wow, this is amazing,
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about that. I was born in 68, and it was probably, I don't remember, maybe 74, something like that, 74, 75, around that time period maybe. And my uncle, my mom's youngest brother, we're at my grandmother's house up in Beloit she lived with my other uncle. He comes in and he goes, "Hey, Kevin, look at this." And he showed me this picture, and there was a wild hair guy, just bug-eyed, wild hair almost covered up the whole picture, space in the middle. He goes, "He doesn't do drugs."
Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
Had that album.
Oh, and it was, I think it was Ted Nugent, right? And no, it was Cat Scratch Fever. And so it was, but I remember from that point on, I became a Ted Nugent fan. And I think I've seen 15 plus shows of his, and probably more. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that he does and things like that, but his music was very instrumental for me in me liking that. I mean, so I had an appreciation for when he was playing with the Amboy Dukes and these were this was counterculture. This wasn't top 40. There were 7-minute songs, 8-minute songs, and then of course from there was for me my journey then. This is via my uncle, then Pink Floyd, and then Foghat, and that journey. And then when I was in middle school, then I was introduced to Black Sabbath and Nazareth and the other types of Ozzy Osbourne and all these different other bands that had for at that time it felt like a darker edge. Now we look at it today and it doesn't seem like that at all,
Not even.
And it was, but there was that element of I can't remember the name of the Black Sabbath album with Iron Man on it and War Pigs and all these different songs, and I just remember listening to this going, oh wow, this is something. Yeah, this isn't my mom and dad's Sattler Brothers and Oak Ridge Boys. There's something else going on here.
No, that's right.
I very much gravitated toward that, and that was also when AC/DC, the original AC/DC with Bon Scott and that type of energy. Ironically, right during football halftimes, those are still the songs that are being played.
Absolutely.
Now 40 years later. Right?
Absolutely.
So music became a big part of your life and your draw toward music, and it was also then an introduction, right? And I think this sometimes, and it's not our parents. I know it's not their intent. I know it wasn't my intent as a parent. Is that we want our children to be safe. We want them to grow and do well in school, do well, in life, not get in trouble, those types of things. But then it almost sets it up to make the other side of things even more tempting. It's almost like it then, because this is what they're showing us and what they don't show us, right? So then it's almost by default, the shadow side becomes even more alluring.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you fit in there, because that's who's accepting you or bringing you in, it's a pretty difficult recipe.
A lot of confusion, I mean, my parents tried to... back to the sports thing, or did I get into, the sports in junior high, there was a little basketball team there, Morrison Junior High, and I tried out, and I didn't make it, because I couldn't do a left-handed layup. I didn't have that coordination. Worked on that all through the summer. My dad helped me with that, and was able to do that. And I did make the team, but I ended up getting this little paper route. And this is the same team that actually went to state my junior year of high school. It's the same group of boys. Wow. And but I ended up stopping and just to pursue money. So I got this little paper route that paid like $2.50 a week. Sure. And but anyway. It's just what I was getting exposed to outside. There's more, and of course the chances of running into different situations, other parents, how they are with their kids. I started seeing that too. I started seeing my friends seemed like they didn't even have a curfew. They could kind of wander around. It's a small town, Morrison. They could seem like they were getting away with stuff, but I'd stay the night at some of their houses. Cigarettes. Everybody seemed to be smoking, and I never had any money, so it's like everybody. I was becoming a mooch because I started exploring that thing, and but I could go to my friend's house and stay the night, and it seemed like we could do anything, and but their parents would come home, like at midnight, but in reality they were closing down the country club, and coming home maybe a little intoxicated, and I never saw anything like that, from my parents, and they were good moral people. I mean, kudos to my parents. This is not they were wrong, they were really protecting me from outside influences, and I started to fight a little bit,
push back against that.
Rebellion started to kick in,
right?
And once I got a taste of that, it got worse. So,
well, and I know in my own journey, it was somewhat similar. Sports were always my thing, and I tasted some success early on because of that, and that was a major shift for me. But along with that, because of the school that I went to, a lot of those athletes in middle school were also individuals that if I spent the night at their house, they were also the ones that you could sneak out of the house. There was, first introduced to, smoking weed or drinking or whatever it may be, and but it was also, they were individuals I also played sports with. I played football, wrestled, and ran track with. For me, because I had so much of my identity wrapped up in the sports performance, and I noticed it affecting my motivation and my drive, it was an easy thing for me to say no. Still wanted to be friends with those guys, still wanted to hang out with them, still wanted to do certain elements of that, but there's certain things that I didn't participate in because for me, I connected that if I did that, then it was affecting something that I knew had value for me. It allowed me to go from invisible to visible. It allowed me to, at least that was how I thought. And I was fortunate enough that I had, and not that I had a problem with anything. We're talking about a handful of exposures, to doing stuff, but I made that connection that this is somehow affecting that kick, want to push a little bit harder when I was working out by myself or whatever, and I remember making that decision that okay, no, I'm not going to do this, and but it again went back to because of the performance, the sports performance, which is a whole nother issues later on in life.
I was the complete opposite. I didn't have the common sense, the smarts, whatever it is, to say no. You mentioned the weed. It started with smoking a cigarette. And I remember not realizing you're supposed to inhale. And I was having a cigarette. It was a Salem. I remember exactly what it was. And this guy said, my friend, hey, you need to inhale. What do you mean? So he showed me, and I did it, and wow, I got so dizzy. I mean, I had like bed spins. And of course, my little, it's to me that I was, had some addictive traits. I wanted another one, and that's when I turned green and, threw up. So it's like,
there should be some foreshadowing there.
Oh yeah, just little did I know what was about to come down in the next 30 years or whatever. But but I just went to that. There was a certain acceptance, but at the same time, I was always just mooching cigarettes, which is like, then you get called names, then you start getting that stuff going on, when you think you're hanging with your friends, but you don't have any money, and everybody else seemed to must have got allowance or something, but everybody had cigarettes. Everybody might have had weed, everybody had something, and I was just always kind of hanging around and, hey, can I get some of that? Can I get one of those? When you start being called a mooch, and people don't want to really hang out with you anymore because you're just always mooching stuff, and I didn't mean to, but it's just the way it was. But it started. My mom and dad. My mom is she's the ultimate church lady. God bless her. And she just Lutheran. Started. I sometimes I joke. I say I got my drug problem because I was drugged to church. But I didn't quite get the deal. And I think I was like most kids. You're sitting in church, and thank God for the half a stick of gum my mom would give me, and hopefully the bulletin had some space on there so I could draw a little bit. Because anything that had to do with it. But church camp, the summer I was going to be a freshman in high school. Signed up for that, and that's the first time I ever smoked pot. So I was like, man, my parents are like, so did you have fun, honey? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. You want to do that again? Oh yeah, I want to go back to church camp. So wait a whole another year,
Sure.
And that was just my little secret.
Yeah.
But these kids from Chicago, I tell you, man, they were onto something. These big city kids, but couldn't wait to get back the next year. Some gal named Sunshine. I don't know if that was her first name or last name, but
Sure.
But it was quite the adventure.
Sure. When you and I've known your story, but at some point it went from experimenting, right, and then it started. And again, I think you nailed it when you said secrets. When we start having that secrets, we start doing that double life, right? That's a contributing factor as when we start getting farther and farther into that dark side, farther and farther into the world of addiction because of secrets, and then all the things that imply, the shame that comes with that secret, and how they want you to be, meaning whoever they are. In this case, maybe it's mom and dad. But then you've tasted something. You tasted what it was like, that if I do this is how I can feel different, let alone there's then also a community piece or a cultural piece that, relational piece that gets tied into that. But that feeling shifts things. And you've said numerous times this morning that there's more out there. And first it was music, and then there was other things. And when for you do you think that it turned into a problem? When did it go from experimenting or socializing, or did it turn into a problem? And maybe it was early on, I don't know, but when did it turn for a problem for you?
Well, in a nutshell, for that whole 4 years of high school, I was a team player on the football team. I wasn't one of those guys that got to start varsity his freshman year, but I played freshman. The pot thing was just like that one time, and then, but man, my sophomore year, I was an offensive guard, started, but still, then I started having, secrets, and the booze thing is what started to happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, alcohol. My mom and dad were, I don't even know if they were social drinkers. I mean, they had alcohol, and they had a cupboard full of hard liquor, and my dad always had Old Milwaukee in the fridge, but he would always drink tea after he get done cutting the grass or something like that. I never saw them drink. When they go out for the night, they were the kind that would come home at 9, not midnight,
Sure, yeah.
And, but you start doing, people are having a house party, and when I discovered that, the alcohol is what, I am somebody now. This set me free. And, I was the kind of immediately. I mean, my first drunk was alcoholic, no doubt about it. Couldn't stop. I think it was probably the mixture of vodka, gin, whiskey, and I think the cream de mint is what got me. But and just trying to mix it all with orange juice,
Oh, sure.
and boy, the sick, and don't quite remember most of the evening, and not sure if my parents knew about that episode, but just for going to sleep and waking up the next day kind of a thing. But it was one of those things where people would have a house party, and anybody having a party, they're trying to get away with something. Their parents are gone, and and they want to make sure everything's cleaned up. But when it's done, and I was the guy that would fall through the screen window or break a lamp, or I couldn't walk, and Kelly, you're not cool, man. We can't have you around here, because everybody's trying to get away with something.
Right.
And I was going to make it to where they're all going to get caught, because of I couldn't hold my liquor, and drinking and smoking pot and taking pills and things like that seemed to be that's all. I thought everybody did that. I didn't realize that a good percentage of the people just in my class didn't do that. But I did hang around with the folks that did partake, and having a little bag of White Cross, speed, doing microdot or acid, smoking pot, in high school. I remember Spicoli, if in a nutshell, me, that part played by Sean Penn, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Okay.
Totally. I remember sitting in a friend's Volkswagen Bug. This is before school, smoking a joint and wearing sweater vests and like we couldn't be smell, and then walking right into class. And first class was yearbook. I was actually a photographer for yearbook. Okay. And Mrs. I don't know if I can mention names, but she great, cool lady. She'd just say to my friend and I, fellas, why don't you meet out in the hall? Come here. Listen, we've got a yearbook to get done. I don't really have a problem with pot, but you coming into my class stoned every day is a problem because we have this yearbook to get done. Okay, Mrs. Blank. Okay, well, we won't do that anymore. So we, wait till lunch, or whatever. Sure. So we could get this yearbook done. Sure. But unfortunately, my photography skills, they weren't. I had the 35 millimeter camera, and I was kind of, finding these cool things to do, like this gentleman here, and drugs and alcohol was just totally getting in my way, and I had no idea that was going on.
That was interfering.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I went all the way to wrestling state. I wasn't the wrestler. We had a few of the guys from our class go to state, and so I went down there with a couple other guys, drinking, taking Valium. I don't even remember the trip. This is like...
And you were supposed to be the photographer.
Never made it to the wrestling match. Didn't get any pictures. Luckily, some parent was in the audience and took a couple. This is the 70s where digital, all these devices and taking quality pictures was not happening yet. I needed to be down by the mat and taking pictures, and didn't make it. And I didn't see that as a problem yet. The fact that I mentioned football, my sophomore year was, I was a team player. Like I said, it wasn't a standout, but I was part of the team. Junior year, I got kicked off for smoking cigarettes. My senior year, I got kicked off for drinking at the homecoming dance. Bottle of schnapps was involved, and an English teacher was involved, and I was pretty wasted at the dance, and I had a date, and she couldn't handle me. I think she walked out during the dinner. I don't really remember it that well, but this is still in high school. This is just high school stuff.
Sure.
And so my parents, when they got that call in the morning, my dad and I got in a crazy fight that night because everybody was going to an after homecoming thing or a party after we were out to breakfast. And it seemed like everybody was able to do this, except for me. And now I got a side note. I was such a prodigal son that I did lose privileges, and I wasn't allowed to do certain things because I was in trouble
all the time.
All the time. And then so I remember getting in a fight with my dad about the curfew and when I was supposed to be home at 11. Everybody else is going to be out, infinite. They could stay out, however. And I couldn't, and I was just irate and just a little poop, and called them a lot of names, and well, it was a bad fight, and the door slamming and all that crap, and they went out that night. Well, back up. I was at the party, in the cafeteria at the high school, and I was handing a bottle of schnapps to this friend of mine, and this hand out of the sky came out of nowhere, and it was an English teacher. And she grabbed that bottle, and trouble was about to go down, and somebody said, "You better get out of here, man," and so I just ran. I ran home, and it was clear across town. I think I stopped to vomit a couple of times. I ended up at home before my parents got. Remember, they were the ones that got home at 9:30. I was home sleeping like a little angel when they came home, and they just knew, well, Mike's home. This is weird.
Something's up.
We went through all of that, and here he is sleeping like a little baby, passed out. But they didn't know that yet. And the next morning, the phone rings. It's Sunday morning. My dad, hello? Uh-huh. I mean, you could just hear the voice, and then the amount of time from the telephone to the hallway to my room, I could count 1,001, 1,002, 1,000. Here comes the door opening up, the covers come off, and all hell breaks loose. I'm kicked out of school. My mom's a school teacher in this little town. Mrs. Kelly was known, still is. I mean, just as 3 years ago, I was getting a massage at a therapeutic massage on my neck, and the gal had mentioned that she lived in Rock Falls, but then she had a little stint in Morrison, and I said, "Morrison, that's where I'm from," blah, blah, blah. And my mom was a school teacher, and Mrs. Kelly, oh my God, I loved her, I mean, sure. Just to this day, and so my reputation and what they stood for, and, their moral values, and I just didn't want anything to do with it, and I was just an embarrassment to them, and I know I was very disappointed in my dad getting off the football. He was proud of me, and
being on the football team.
Yeah, and I was starting my senior year. I was a nose guard, 155 pounds, but man, I could shoot that two-hole, and I nailed that quarterback every time before they even knew what was happening. I mean, I was doing pretty good. And we were, I think we won 5 games and maybe lost. We were actually, maybe we're going to be in the playoffs and stuff. And it just, I got kicked off. Second time. I never got my varsity letter, and just disappointment. So then you go into that, well, they're mad. They're disappointed. And I didn't have enough smarts to understand that. So now I'm going to take it even further and make them sound like they're bad, because I'm grounded for the rest of my life. And it was just, and little did I know that for the next 20 years, it was going to get a whole lot worse. And so that whole addiction started. I just wanted to be accepted. Yeah. I wanted to be somebody else's name. I wanted to be called Jeremy. I was in a rock band. Just ask anybody at the campground when we'd go down on our family trips to Florida, these people I would never see anymore. I was somebody down there because I could just BS my way through everything.
Make a story up.
Just lie. I was a black belt in karate until I got my butt kicked one time, and a scuba diver. Because I read about it, so I knew enough about it. I never did any of these things. I just wanted this acceptance, and so if I could be this or I could be that or make it up, people would like me.
Yeah.
I had a guitar that my parents were willing to do anything for me.
Yeah.
And I think I took a handful of guitar lessons, and I know I did, but there was a particular chord. It was an F chord. There's probably a reason why I called it an F chord, an effing chord, but I mean, it was just a hard chord to do, and Stairway to Heaven and certain cool songs weren't even around to be learned yet, but I made myself out to be more of a guitar player than I really was, you know. But nobody could see me. I did not ever get that opportunity to play in front of anybody, but I was just full of it, man.
Well, and one of the things that I think as an addiction counselor, when I'm trying to educate people, trying to explain to people either who are actively involved themselves and are teetering on needing to get into recovery because it's now taken over their life, but it's almost like you said, twofold. One is the social emotional piece that there's something I'm looking for. I'm looking for something more. I'm searching for something more. I want to be somebody more, and not necessarily knowing how to do it. So we take shortcuts, not telling the truth, making stuff up, keeping secrets, right? And then the other piece, like you said, there was something different when you introduced alcohol into your system. There was some kind of thing, and as a general rule, we look at it as from a genetic standpoint. Most individuals that fall into alcoholism, later say that they're alcoholic, will talk about their first experience with alcohol as being something was different, right? And not all alcoholics, right? There's 1,000 different types of alcoholics, but the ones that early on, right? Like you said, that you had that experience, and you may have practiced a lot, so you would think because you practiced a lot, you'd be able to hold your alcohol, but it was because it had a different effect on you,
absolutely,
than someone else, and that part of it not wanting to end, not wanting the party to end, not wanting, because whatever reason, there was a part where you didn't want that restriction. You didn't want that party to be over. So one of it's the addictive piece. The other part of it is this wanting to fit in, social, emotional, and then be accepted. And it's you experienced. If I tell made up story, then look at that, I got away with it. It worked.
Yeah,
it's kind of like getting away with smoking cigarettes or drinking or whatever. As we kind of move forward, you've been sober now for how long?
Going on 5 years.
5 years in recovery.
This time, I've been in recovery. I went back, crawled back into AA about 20 years ago. Okay. And that was kind of a rough start. I didn't really want it. I needed to change. Yeah. And I saw the work involved. I was like, this is going to be kind of crazy. But
and what longest amount of sobriety prior to these 5 years? What was the longest amount that you stretched together?
The last 10 years, they just weren't in a row, but I had a year, then a 2-year period, and this run's been really good.
5 years consecutively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's different?
Just doing the work.
Okay. So go ahead.
Well, I'm a big fan of AA.
Okay.
And they have a very simple program.
Yeah. And with the 12 steps, right?
Oh yeah.
In those principles, there's obviously the steps within themselves and the fellowship that comes with that, and the individuals that have been there before that you can get guidance from.
Absolutely.
But as you've mentioned already, it's not. I think it's important for everyone to know, right? Is that it's just like church or sports or whatever. When a person's doing well in life, or when they're not doing well in life, it's how a person utilizes the program. It's not if the program's good or not. It's not if the program's successful or not. It has everything to do with the utilization, right, and the implementation of in this case the steps and the principles and what's being taught. It's not necessarily if people who are critics of either, of church or the educational system or whatever it may be, they'll say, well, see, it doesn't working. Well, are they working it? Are they really working it, or are they, just going through the motions, or are they kind of working it, doing it their way, right? And this time was different because he worked it.
That's pretty much it. It's that simple. It was just time to grow up, Kevin. Yeah. I mean, I'm 60 years old, so 50 years old. I mean, my life, I had my oldest daughter. I had a letter from her that as of today, I am no longer your daughter. Mm-hmm. And she was a social worker with a degree in it. She knew exactly what she was saying. My youngest daughter, that has the grandbabies, she wished that she had a disease, that maybe if she was really sick, that I would focus on that instead of my drinking. Mm-hmm. So you hear these things. Mm-hmm. You have these things. And my dad and I, this wonderful man, still with my mom, 52 years. I'd call not too long ago, and hey, Dad, I'm thinking about coming down to Florida. I just wanted to let you know. And well, just don't bring your crap with you. Just your drama. Just don't bring your stuff. Mm-hmm. And also, he would answer the phone. Hello, hey, Dad. Well, hang on, Mike. Let me get your mom. I mean, it was cut short. Mm-hmm. And today, hey, Michael, how's it go? It's just night and day. But there's forgiveness, mm-hmm. and it's not quite on my end. Mm-hmm. It's on another end, and so I'm really grateful for that. Yeah. My mom, I'm her only kid, so. Mm-hmm. But that the alcoholism, and I think you said something about it could be an inherited gene, or my real father, chronic alcoholic. Okay. And liked girls. Okay. But all at the same time. Yeah. And strangely enough, I never witnessed any of his stuff. Yeah. Nothing. And I became just like him. Yeah. I didn't even hear stories. Yeah. I knew nothing. And I became just like him. Yeah. And then my grandfather, my mother's father, but she got to see him sober for like 5 years, but heavy smoker, real man, she lived with alcohol that magnitude that I think that she couldn't even really have friends over, kind of a thing, back in the day. But so this alcoholism thing has been around for a while. My dad has been exposed to it too, just with some of his brother-in-laws. Sure. But anyway. Well, and I think and that's what we talk about, the genetic predisposition, how our body craves a certain amount of dopamine, a certain amount of things, and then when we get this alcohol rush or the chase or the excitement of meeting someone new, and that honeymoon phase of meeting someone new, even if the cycle time's just a night, right? Those are all things that certain individuals will have a predisposition to, or lack of a better term, allergic reaction to. I want more. There's a hole in the bucket, and you need more to fill it up. And so that, I think there's an element, and then until we surrender, right? That's one of the concepts we talk about. Until we surrender and humble ourselves enough to surrender, but then also learn to get that same feeling, because there's nothing wrong with the feeling. It's just I got to find different avenues to get the same feeling, because if I don't, then I'm just going to be depressed. It's like being on a diet, right? Oh, yeah. And diets are never successful long term. You got to figure out how to change your eating lifestyle. You got to change. It's about changing that mindset, changing that lifestyle. And so I know you've been a musician. You've been obviously into music your entire life, and tell us a little bit about what you do with music now, and then how is it different now that you're 5 years sober? Well, it's my lifeline. between playing music and teaching it, I think the most important part is the teaching aspect. The hundreds of students, and I can count on one hand a few little negative situations with a student, but they've all been awesome, and I'm able to talk about music, speak into their life, especially with young guys. I can kind of talk a little bit about what it's like to be a musician, how you're supposed to be. For me, that old cliche, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sex and drugs just about took the rock and roll away from me, and because that's a whole other aspect, was the relationships. Too, I just get off the subject for a second. Relationships was the quickest white chip picker upper for me, and a white chip is cashing in your 1-year coin or 2-year coin or 10-year coin and picking up a white chip because you decided to try it again. And I would typically pick the most messed up person, because then I started learning about codependency and that whole concept. But back to the music thing. So it wasn't always just the alcohol. Alcohol is a symptom, getting down to that cause and condition of that insecurity, that why can't I just meet this person? Why can't I just like myself? That's what I had to discover.
Right.
Why can't I be okay with me? And I missed that. I had so many people telling me that. I've gone through a few sponsors that actually kind of had to let me go. Just, Mike, they become friends, and I'm still doing things that they would really suggest that I don't. Not drinking, but being involved with somebody that's just pure toxic. And I that codependency and that insecurity there. So.
Well, for the individuals who don't really understand with codependency, is this idea starts with wanting to be wanted, and wanting for a price, wanting to help someone else out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Thinking that you can be that one to help someone else out. And then when it doesn't work out, the devastation, and then, of course, the anger, and then, of course, then feeling guilty because you're angry. And so then you try to rescue again, and then you fall into a victim stance because you're disappointed or hurt that it didn't go the way you wanted. And then you go into persecutor, and we're around the triangle again, right?
There's a story that a long time ago, when I was just a little boy, 6 years old probably, my grandma, who was my hero, my mother's mom, and she worked on the railroad, and she cooked for the men on the railroad, and they lived on a train, an old converted passenger train. So it was quite cool to go see and visit Grandma on the train, when I was a little kid in Chicago Northwestern. And they'd be out in the middle of nowhere with this train on a side track, and but we'd go to the grocery store every day and pick up groceries because she had to cook every night for all these guys. And I remember my mom or my grandma buying this gift for my mother, because I was staying there for a couple of weeks for the summer, and my mom was going to come that week to pick me up, take me back home, and she said, "Now, don't you tell your mom that I bought this." I'm like, "Oh no, Grandma, I won't do this." Well, the minute I saw my mom, guess what? Grandma bought you, and she's like, "Michael, I don't like you anymore." She said that to me, and it was like, and I know what she meant today, sarcasm. It just was that thing that we do every now and then, And to this, my last ex-wife, 10 years ago, said to me, "Did somebody tell you they don't like you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" We were in one of our heated moments, which was daily. And she says, "Well, every time we get like this, you always say, 'I suppose you don't like me anymore.'" And it just hit me. So there's that cause and condition.
Yep.
I just wanted to be liked.
Yeah.
And it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted everybody to like me. Yeah. And I'm a people person. I've learned that about myself. I'm very social, very friendly, kind, courteous. What I learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And, but I became, a people pleaser. I mean, I'd give you the rest of my pot, I'd give you the rest of my booze, the rest of my Coke, the rest of this, the rest of my pills, just so you would like me. And then, well, they liked me, but then it was over, and then I'd be by myself going, dang, I just gave all my stuff away.
And then be angry.
And then you're just disappointed and you're depressed, and it's like, what the heck's wrong with me,
Yeah.
And then you drink some more.
Yeah.
And so, but back to this whole music thing, man. That was a way to be liked.
Yeah.
Another way to be. I wasn't a musician. I was half-assed at best. I was always like that as a student. If I was getting a C on my final exam, I wouldn't even study for it. Or if I was getting a C for the year, I wouldn't even study for my final exam because I knew that it would average out to a D. Because it just. It wasn't that I was stupid, I just didn't do the work.
Yeah.
It's like my program.
Yeah, the lack of discipline, right?
No discipline. Zero. Just pure rebellion and complete idiot. I was a freaking idiot. I call myself a dumbass a lot, and it's true. But
well, let me jump on that for just a second, because I've gotten to know you over the last 2 years, and dumbass would not be what I would think. I do think you've had some experience with taking shortcuts.
Oh yeah.
And I think that sometimes you default to the shortcut.
Right.
And that actually was a learned behavior that was pretty. Now, the fact that you may not have learned from it might be the dumbass part. I don't know.
That's definitely it.
But I would not think of Michael Kelly as being someone who's not intelligent. It's someone maybe in the past took shortcuts.
Oh yeah.
The easier path, or what perceived to be the
easier, softer way. Yeah.
And now that you've been learning, and I'm assuming it's the same way when it comes to teaching, that I just saw a post that you recently posted about a young guy who did a phenomenal job of playing, and you quoted on the caption something to the effect of not only continue to come to the lesson, but practicing when he wasn't in the studio with you. Mm-hmm. And that's not the easier way. That's the harder way.
Thanks for practicing.
Yeah, thanks for practicing. It's teaching those things that, I think of, like, when we talked earlier about this idea of addiction and alcoholism and keeping secrets and shortcuts, that had become your normal. And for you to cross that threshold into recovery and do a different path for a while there, maybe even still, there's disorder. There's this, how do I do this? And there's going to be temptations. People are going to hurt you, and people are going to disappoint you, and then, how do I get out of my head, right? How many times do we have conversations while I'm riding the bike and we're talking, about little things, right?
Oh yeah, I know.
And how to choose a humbler path, how to, and that it's okay, and now with your students, as well as when you perform, you're able to give some of those lessons back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Let alone your parents, because I know that you and your parents are much closer today than you were 3 years ago.
Yeah, my parents went to a meeting with me yesterday. I actually I chaired a meeting yesterday morning, and it was a really great meeting. There was a lot of recovery, a lot of sobriety. Yeah. And one guy had 27 years, another gentleman had like a year, and it was his aunt, so family kind of a thing, but my parents were present, and they got to see. They've been to an AA meeting or two with me before, but my mom's just always a ball of tears because she just sees what goes on in a meeting.
Well, she feels the pain, right?
Well, and she sees the joy, and she sees the recovery.
Yeah. And has to be grateful for where you're at today.
There's no doubt.
As we know, though, it's one day at a time.
One day.
As we know that we still have to choose today to do the next right thing.
That's right.
When there's some temptations to do the alternative. So,
yeah.
But Mike, as we get ready to wrap up for today, and I really appreciate you being on. I even more so appreciate what you're doing for individuals in the community who want to learn the music. What, if there was something that you would want to share as we part today, what would you want to share?
I have so much going on through my head right now, but find your get a vision. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? If you want to be a musician, then be one. If you want to be an athlete, then be one. You got to show up. You got to do it. Your parents are harping on you because they want what's best, but maybe you can get an A for yourself and do it for you. And I had a student. I had to ask him. I says and I knew his dad. His dad and his grandfather wanted me to spend extra time with the boy, and I will pay you a little extra if you could just talk some sense into him. And I remember asking him, I said, hey man, do you, because your dad harps on you all the time about getting crazy, do you feel that you're doing it for him? Yeah. And you don't want to do it for him, do you? He said, no. I'm tired of this. I said, well, why don't you do it for yourself?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I've had to learn. Just do it. Just do it. We have the means. I know some people come from different situations, but I didn't come from the other side of the tracks. I wasn't on the streets. I came from a great upbringing, good stock.
Well, I think the difference, like you said, is instead of making up stories of who you want to be, you at some point started doing the work to be who you wanted to be.
Oh, yeah, I've always been that person. It's weird.
Yeah. So, Michael, I appreciate you so much for being here and sharing your story and being able to share it for other individuals. And looking forward to you being with us on the 5th of September at Out of the Ashes. But your story is just one of those ways that how art can be used, music can be used for resiliency and for transformation.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for joining us today. And Michael Kelly, you can see him. He's in a handful of different bands locally where he plays out, as well as you can hear him play on September 5th at Out of the Ashes at Giovanni's. We'll have more information about that. But thank you again for being with us today, and we will see you next week.